Hello everyone, and welcome to History of the Ancient World. Today we're journeying back in time over 4,000 years to the land of the pharaohs, pyramids, and the mighty Nile River. Get ready to explore the incredible daily life of the ancient Egyptians. When we think of ancient Egypt, magnificent tombs and golden treasures often come to mind. But what was life really like for the ordinary people who built this amazing civilization? Let's peel back the layers of history and find out. Life in ancient Egypt was completely centered around the Nile. It wasn't just a river, it was the source of all life. Every year, from June to September, the Nile would flood its banks, depositing a thick, rich layer of black silt. This fertile soil made the land perfect for farming. The Egyptians called their country Kemet, which means the black land, because of this dark, life-giving mud. Beyond the black land was the Deshret, the red land, the vast, harsh desert that protected Egypt from invaders. This predictable cycle of flood, planting, and harvest shaped the entire Egyptian calendar and their way of life. After the floodwaters receded, usually around October, the farmers would get to work. They used simple tools like wooden plows, often pulled by oxen, to prepare the soil. Their main crops were grains like emmer wheat and barley, which were essential for making two staples of their diet: bread and beer. Yes, beer was a huge part of their daily life. It was nutritious, safer to drink than potentially contaminated water, and was even used as a form of payment for laborers working on the pyramids. Beyond grains, they also grew a variety of vegetables like onions, garlic, lettuce, beans, and lentils. Orchards produced dates, figs, and pomegranates. It was a surprisingly diverse diet. So who were these people? Egyptian society was structured like a pyramid. At the very top, of course, was the pharaoh, who was considered a living god. Below the pharaoh were the high-ranking officials, like the vizier, the pharaoh's chief advisor, and the high priests, who held immense power and wealth. Next came the scribes. This was a highly respected profession. Scribes were the record keepers, the administrators, and the educators of ancient Egypt. They spent years learning the complex system of hieroglyphs, which involved hundreds of signs. Being a scribe was a path to social mobility. A boy from a humble background could become a powerful official if he learned to read and write. Below the scribes were the skilled artisans and craftsmen. These were the talented stonemasons, carpenters, jewelers, and painters who created the stunning art and architecture we admire today. They worked in large workshops, often attached to temples or palaces, and passed their skills down through generations. The vast majority of the population, however, belonged to the base of the pyramid, the farmers and laborers. Their lives were tied to the land and the seasons. They worked hard, paid taxes to the pharaoh in the form of a share of their crops, and during the inundation season, when farming was impossible, many were conscripted to work on the pharaoh's massive building projects, like the pyramids and temples. Now let's step inside a typical Egyptian home. Most ordinary Egyptians lived in houses made of sun-dried mud bricks. These homes were designed to stay cool in the hot climate. They often had flat roofs where families could sleep on hot nights. The windows were small and placed high up to let in light but keep out the heat. Inside, the furniture was simple. People had low wooden stools, small tables, and reed mats for sleeping. Wealthier homes might have more elaborate beds, chairs, and decorated chests for storage. The kitchen was usually a separate area at the back of the house, with a clay oven for baking bread and a hearth for cooking. Family was incredibly important to the ancient Egyptians. They cherished their children and believed in a strong family unit. Both men and women had rights. While men were typically the head of the household and worked outside the home, women managed the household, raised the children, and could also own property, run businesses, and even testify in court. Egyptian women enjoyed a level of freedom and legal rights that was rare in the ancient world. And what did they do for fun? Egyptians loved music, dancing, and festivals. They played instruments like harps, lutes, and flutes. We have many paintings that show lively banquets with musicians and dancers entertaining the guests. They also enjoyed board games. The most popular was a game called Senet, which means passing. It was a game of strategy played on a long board, and it was so important that it was often included in tombs, as Egyptians believed they could play it against the gods in the afterlife. Let's talk about their appearance. Both men and women took great pride in their looks. They wore simple linen clothing, kilts for men, and straight dresses for women, which was light and comfortable in the heat. But their real passion was makeup. Both sexes wore heavy black kohl eyeliner. This wasn't just for beauty. They believed it helped protect their eyes from the sun's glare and ward off infections. They also used green eyeshadow, made from a mineral called malachite. Religion permeated every aspect of their lives. The Egyptians worshipped a huge pantheon of gods and goddesses, who they believed controlled the forces of nature and their destinies. Gods like Ra, the sun god, Osiris, the god of the underworld, and Isis, the goddess of magic and motherhood, were central to their beliefs. To honor their gods, they built magnificent temples, which they considered the homes of the gods on earth. Only priests and the pharaoh were allowed into the inner sanctuaries. Ordinary people would participate in outdoor festivals and processions. Of course, we can't talk about ancient Egypt without mentioning their beliefs about death and the afterlife. For the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transition to another, better life. To get there, the body had to be preserved through mummification, and the spirit had to pass a series of tests, the most important being the weighing of the heart. The deceased's heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If the heart was lighter than the feather, they were granted eternal life. If it was heavier, it was devoured by a monster, and their existence ended forever. This deep belief in the afterlife is why they built such elaborate tombs, like the pyramids and the hidden tombs in the Valley of the Kings. They filled them with everything a person would need in the next life: food, furniture, tools, games, and even small servant statues called shabtis, who were meant to do the work for the deceased in the afterlife. From the farmer planting his crops by the Nile, to the scribe recording history, and the pharaoh preparing for eternity, life in ancient Egypt was a rich and complex tapestry woven with threads of tradition, religion, and an incredible will to build a civilization that would last for millennia. Their legacy is not just in stone and gold, but in the enduring story of the people who lived along the Great River. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. I hope you enjoyed this glimpse into the daily life of the ancient Egyptians. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to History of the Ancient World for more adventures into our fascinating past. Let us know in the comments which ancient civilization you'd like to explore next. See you in the next video.